Guys, we're going to record some stuff real quick. All right, so an example of what a compressor does would be this. A compressor takes the loudest parts of your track, of your signal, of your source, and it brings everything down to an even level. So everything you've heard on the radio, it's very smooth, the volume is very constant the whole time. There might even be times where the singer gets angry and starts to yell, but their voice doesn't actually get louder. You ever notice that? So that would be compression, right? What that does is it takes the louder parts and it brings them down to a certain level that you tell it to. So this is an example of uncompressed audio. You can see here's your red line. You've got some that are slightly above it, some that are very far above it, some that don't even make it up to it. And then here's an example of that same audio clip with some compression on it. It just takes all of these parts and shrinks them down into a nice smooth part. So in all these little pieces, this is your singer getting louder and quieter, or your drum getting louder or quieter. Maybe they're hitting the snare hard, maybe they're hitting the snare quiet. Compression is just going to take all those things and smooth them out and make them sound a lot more uniform, right? Yeah, so if I whack my snare drum, you're not going to be driving down the car or driving down the road and swerve like this because one note is way too loud, right? So, and then right here is just a very, very simple example of what compressors look like. You can get super in depth on how to do it, but most of the best compressors out there literally have two knobs on them. Two knobs. I like to call it the make good knob and the make better knob. Okay, so you've got gain right there. What that's going to do is adjust how loud your signal is coming into your compressor. So if your signal's not quite loud enough as it is before you put the compressor on, you can boost it a little bit with the compressor. You can actually make it louder. So say I've recorded a snare drum track and it's not quite as loud as it should have been, and I can't go back and do it again. I can make it a little bit louder with my compressor there. And then your next knob over here is peak reduction. So that is going to choose how much of these peaks you see here you want to bring down. So this person has turned it to a certain way that it's brought all these peaks from up here and even them off that much. If they had turned it up to full, it probably would have brought these peaks all the way down, very, very small, and it wouldn't have sounded very good. It would have sounded probably robotic if you put too much compression, right? So yeah, you have your input gain, which is how loud your signal coming in is, and then you have your peak reduction, which is how smooth you want to make it, how much of those high parts you want to bring down.
So when the example you were saying, if you compress it way too much, then like sounding robotics, meaning there's not much of a dynamic
There's
variation.
no dynamic, exactly. So in somebody singing, and especially a very good singer, you want to hear the dynamics of their voice. You want to hear them get louder, softer. Maybe it's an emotional song. You want to hear those qualities of their voice. So you don't want to ever compress anything too much. And same goes for drums. You don't want to compress anything too much. It'll just sound not like it should. It won't sound like a real thing anymore, which is what you want. Yeah, it can just get a little bit too dull, and it can also just start like messing up the sound of your music. Like if you put too much, it might just add some weird noises and not be right. Here's another example of compressors. This is basically same as this, just laid out in a different way. This is setting. What this is saying is everything louder than that point right there, I want you to bring down. I don't want anything in my mix louder than that. So if at any point I hit the snare drum so hard that it got louder than that, my compressor is going to